Welcome to this explainer. Most of us just wake up on a Monday morning and completely accept the 5-day work week and the 2-day weekend as a fundamental truth of human existence. It's almost like gravity. But as we're going to see today, the calendar you live by is entirely constructed. It has been bent, broken, and rewritten over centuries to serve the ever-shifting needs of society. So, I want to kick things off by asking a question that might just shatter your whole idea of a normal calendar. If time is a fixed, universal constant, can a government simply delete an entire day from existence? I mean, it sounds like pure science fiction, right? Or maybe a weird computer glitch. But keep this question in the back of your mind as we look at how easily human beings can manipulate time when there's a strong enough financial incentive. Well, the answer is an absolute yes. Back in 2011, the nation of Samoa literally erased a Friday overnight. Poof, gone. You'd go to bed on Thursday and wake up directly on Saturday. There were no alarms, no warnings. Friday, December 30th, 2011 was completely wiped from the local calendar. If it was your birthday, skipped. Had a flight booked? Yeah, that ticket was entirely useless. So why do something so drastic? Well, Samoa was tired of being one of the last places on Earth to celebrate anything. By the time their major trade partners were opening markets for a new day, Samoa was stuck a full day behind. So the government made this incredibly bold move to physically shift the entire country across the international dateline. They deleted a whole day just to sync up their economy. Which brings us to Section 1, skipping days for trade. We just saw a country literally delete a day to sync up globally. But what happens when you have to balance global trade with deep, profound local traditions at the exact same time? You get the ultimate calendar compromise. Just look at Brunei. Prior to some administrative changes in the early 21st century, they operated under this wildly fascinating dual-track system. The public sector got Thursday and Friday off, prioritizing Friday for Islamic communal prayer so workers could fulfill their religious duties completely undisturbed. But they knew shutting down the private sector, the multinational corporations, the banks, the logistics firms, on a Friday would economically isolate them from the Western world. So the private sector stuck to a standard Saturday-Sunday weekend. It's a stunning setup, really showing how time is manipulated to serve two completely different masters, faith and finance. Moving to Section 2, designing the day of rest. Now, if the weekend can just be split in half like that today, where did the mandated day of rest actually come from in the first place? We totally take it for granted that the state requires employers to give us time off. But the roots of this mandate, they're much older and way more religious than you might think. To understand this, we have to look at blue laws. This is a concept tracing all the way back to Roman Emperor Constantine in AD 321, and later to the early 17th century American colonies. Constantine actually promulgated the very first known law prohibiting Sunday labor. He declared that on the venerable day of the sun, city folk should rest, and workshops had to close. Fast forward to North America, and the very first General Assembly of Virginia in 1619 passed strict rules forcing colonists to attend morning and afternoon worship on Sundays. Over time, those explicitly religious mandates evolved, but the restriction of commerce stayed deeply baked into Western law. And what's truly wild is just how restrictive these laws were. I mean, for a long time, the state literally dictated what you could and could not buy on your day off. In Texas, for example, you legally could not buy housewares, we're talking pots, pans, washing machines, on a Sunday until 1985. No way, right? And believe it or not, the legacy of these laws is actually still with us. In states like Colorado, Illinois, and Pennsylvania, car dealerships still cannot trade or sell a car on a Sunday. Texas and Utah even prohibit dealerships from operating over consecutive weekend days. It really shows how, even in modern times, society uses the law to enforce a collective pause in commerce. So the really crucial takeaway here is that even though these laws kicked off for purely religious reasons, they survived because modern judges saw the sheer economic and social necessity of forcing a break in labor. In the landmark 1961 case, McGovern v. Maryland, the U.S. Supreme Court looked at these restrictions and agreed that while they originated to encourage Christian church attendance, their modern purpose was entirely secular. Chief Justice Earl Warren put it beautifully. He noted the state has a real interest in setting one day apart, a day for rest, repose, recreation, and tranquility. A day just to visit friends and family, completely separated from the intense commercial activity of the work week. Basically, the courts agreed that forcing businesses to close one day a week actually protected workers from exploitation and enhanced overall labor productivity. Section 3. The 5-Day Revolution.
Having established that universal day of rest, how did we actually carve out the 2-day weekend we completely take for granted today? Because honestly, a single day off was the norm for a very, very long time. It was a painstakingly slow process. Take Czechoslovakia, for example. For much of the 20th century, a manual, blue-collar worker there worked a uniform 8-hour shift Monday through Saturday. Only Sunday was for rest. In 1956, they finally got a slight reprieve when Saturday hours were dropped to 6. By 1968, a massive labor revolution hit, officially implementing the 5-day workweek. But, and this is wild, it actually took until March 11, 1989 for the very last mandatory working Saturday to occur. That's only about 36 years ago.
You see, even after those laws changed, the state still held the power to force extra weekend shifts. The government would call these special working Saturdays, nicknamed Subotniki or Mamulovki, just to compensate for public holidays and make sure the state met its annual quota for working days. But by the 1980s, the economic reality set in. Companies realized that dragging exhausted workers into the factory on a Saturday resulted in terrible productivity. Actually, scratch that, it wasn't just terrible. The forced weekend shifts simply weren't economically viable at all. The experiment failed because human beings just literally needed more rest.
This brings us to Section 4, Greece's 6-day rebound.
Now, just as the 5-day workweek felt like a permanent global standard, we're suddenly seeing an unprecedented reversal in Europe. We just talked about how long it took to eliminate the 6-day workweek, which makes this next development absolutely shocking. The Greek government has controversially passed a law allowing a 6-day workweek, citing massive demographic and economic pressures. While dozens of other countries are running highly positive experiments with 4-day workweeks, Greece went in the completely opposite direction. The Prime Minister's administration argues this is basically a necessary survival tactic. When you're facing the twin perils of a shrinking population and a shortage of skilled workers, their solution is to mandate that the existing workforce simply works more days. They also argue that formalizing a 6-day week fights the phenomenon of illegal, undeclared work. So how does this actually work? The mechanics of the new Greek law mean employers can unilaterally decide to make staff work a 6th day, but they must incentivize it by paying a 40% overtime premium for those extra 8 hours. The catch here is that this isn't a friendly negotiation between the boss and the worker. The law grants the employer the absolute power to look at an employee and tell them they are coming in for a 6th day that week. The cap is 8 hours for that extra day, and the trade-off for the worker's lost weekend is that 40% boost in their wages for that specific shift. Naturally, this legislation has sparked fierce backlash from Greek workers. Many feel completely exploited by this mandate, highlighting a severe tension between the state's economic needs and actual citizen well-being. I mean, from their perspective, being put on the hook for an extra day of labor is literally the absolute last thing they need while trying to survive an era of rising cost of living expenses. For many, that 40% premium simply doesn't make up for the exhaustion and the loss of personal time. It really brings us right back to the historical struggles we saw in places like Czechoslovakia.
And this brilliantly illustrates the bizarre paradox of our modern time. While a vast majority of workers in places like Czechia push hard toward a 4-day week, Greece is reverting to a 6-day model. In Czechia today, 70% of employees support shifting to a 4-day workweek, totally inspired by successful trials around the globe prioritizing well-being and productivity. Yet right next door in the European Union, Greece is legislating a return to the 6-day week just to keep its economy afloat amid demographic collapse. It just goes to show you there is absolutely no perfect, universal answer to how human labor should be divided.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question. With countries moving in completely opposite directions, will the ultimate future of human labor require working less or working more? We've seen countries delete entire days just to trade faster. We've seen them split weekends to balance prayer and profit, invent blue laws to force a societal pause, and now legally resurrect the 6-day workweek. The calendar isn't fixed at all. It's really just a mirror reflecting our deepest economic and social anxieties. So take a look at your own schedule for next week and ask yourself, in 10 years, will that calendar be completely unrecognizable